Hi, my name is MachineRite, and this is Understanding Fortnite. As a coach, I've helped hundreds of people test different keybinds. I've switched keybinds many times myself, so I just wanted to make a video just kind of giving my opinion on what the best possible keybinds that you could use are. And I also want to talk a bit about double movement binds, since my last keybind video didn't talk about these at all. And also just talk about using macros for double movement and what I think about that. So before we go into keybinds, I just want to talk about something that I usually never mention in my videos, and it's probably one of the most important things you can learn while trying to get good at mouse and keyboard, and it's your stretches and controlling tension. So stretches can actually help a lot with improving dexterity. They can help improve finger independence, they can help improve speed and dexterity, as well as improving flexibility, and also help you avoid injuries like tendonitis and carpal tunnel and things like that. I'm going to link my favorite stretching routine in the description of this video. It is not a gaming focused stretching routine. It's actually a routine I found for guitar, but having injuries myself and experimenting with a lot of different stretches, I found these ones were actually the best. And even more important than stretches is controlling tension in your hands and your arms. Having tension in your hands or arms while using a mouse and keyboard, or basically just using too much strength, is probably the number one reason people have injuries in the first place. Basically, when you're using too much strength in your hand, the forearm in your muscle is constantly pulling against the tendons in your hand to move your fingers. And when you're tensing up like this, it's putting a lot of pressure on your wrist, which is why it can cause wrist injuries. And when you're practicing at a high level and playing almost 5-hour sessions or more, your muscles and your tendons don't really get a time to repair themselves, because lifting weights will put way more tension in these muscles. But the thing is you're not doing that for as long as you would be gaming, and it's really those long sessions and constant abuse to your hands day after day that will cause injuries to start. So basically what you want to do is get used to using the least amount of strength required to press your keys and move your mouse around, and you'll notice in the end that you'll actually end up becoming faster by using less strength, because when every muscle in your forearm is not contracted and half of them are relaxed and you're only using the muscles that are required, you actually get a lot more freedom in movement, and your muscles also aren't constantly fighting against each other. A trick I like to use to reduce tension is just pretend that your mouse and keyboard are made out of paper and that they'll break or crumble if you press too hard. Okay, for optimal keybinds, there's a few rules that I like to follow. The first one is to make sure that you can move in all directions while building and editing. And the next one is to try and make sure that your edit, pickaxe, wall, and shotgun are all on separate fingers. I also try to make my shotgun and pickaxe as accessible as possible. So here are my example binds. I personally think that anyone could use these binds and be effective on them, maybe making some slight adjustments just to personalize them a bit more, but other than that, the core layout can still stay pretty much the same. Now, first thing you may notice is edit is actually on your thumb. Because of edit on release, you don't actually need a whole lot of speed anymore, and it's actually much more optimal to have free movement while editing, rather than get that little bit of extra speed on your index finger. The wall and ramp on the mouse is pretty standard. What I do different is I think that it's better to have your cone on your thumb. This is because cone is the only bind that you really crouch with. When you're going underneath one and crouching underneath one to heal or something, because you really don't crouch with much other builds, cone is really the only one that you directly crouch with. And then I've also put floor on the pinky finger. Most people actually put floor on thumb, but this has the similar issue with the cone where floor is one of the most common builds that you actually jump with. So having jump and floor on the same finger doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. And for pinky binds, I actually prefer to use caps lock. This is because your pinky finger and ring finger don't actually have a whole lot of independence from each other. So let's say I had to reach down into control to crouch and press Q at the same time. It's quite a stretch. You can try this right now and you'll see exactly what I mean. And before you say that you can't do these binds because your pinky is too weak and your thumb is too slow, you gotta understand that everybody has that issue, and it's just something that needs to be trained. For some reason in gaming and esports, having a weak pinky has just become a valid excuse not to use it. And people still preach to use what's comfortable to you, regardless whether it's the most optimal thing on paper or not. But when you look at a skill like piano, for example, that excuse doesn't exist. You would never be able to go to a piano teacher and tell them that your pinky is too weak and you can't use it. They would still force you to use all of your fingers because you literally cannot reach the highest level of playing without doing that. And in that world of music, that's just called proper form, and it's very well understood that proper form will give you the most success in the long run. And because the dexterity of certain fingers like that need to be trained over time, it just doesn't make sense to me to choose what's comfortable to you as a beginner. Because as a beginner, obviously the dexterity in those fingers haven't developed yet. that. So when people tell you to use what's most comfortable to you, regardless of the limitations, I just don't think that's good advice. I think you'll have much better success in the long run using a set of keybinds that's more optimal on paper. One reason I would say not to change your keybinds is if you're already pro, you're already having success in tournaments. At that point, I would say that it's not necessary to change keybinds. I also want to quickly talk about ESDF and IJKL movement binds. I personally don't think these are useful because, like I said, inherently people's pinkies are actually weak and they need to be trained. But by giving your pinky 2 binds to work with, you're actually going to reduce the amount of time that it takes to train your pinky to be effective. Now again, in the long run, sure, you can be effective with having like 5 pinky binds, but you got to think about the amount of time that it's going to take to get good at that. So with these keybinds, I tried to balance being optimal, but also giving the weaker fingers as little work as possible, because training your pinky finger to use 5 binds is possible, but it could take years before you get really effective at using that. And by having your pinky binds, caps, and shift, you actually get these nice really wide keys, and you don't have to train your pinky to be as precise as if you're getting them to press normal square keycaps. So this can also speed up the learning process. And another thing that's been made popular is using IJKL as movement. And the reason people use this is because they say that they get more thumb binds. And this is sort of true, but I actually think it's better to have all your thumb binds over top of your spacebar. This is because no matter what key you're on, you're going to have quick access to the spacebar, and you're also going to have the ability to press both that bind and the spacebar at the same time if you bar your thumb across the 2 keys. So by using IJKL and using the right alt and the keys over there, you actually miss out on being able to do this. Okay, so if you wanted to have double movement binds for this setup, basically I would use C and Z, and you would be pressing C with your index, and you'd be pressing Z with your ring finger. So basically, if you wanted to use that double movement running strafe to the right side, you would press W, D, and Z at the same time. And if you wanted to go left, then you would press W, A, and C at the same time. The reason I like to do it this way instead of using thumb and pinky is because it allows you to edit and use all of your build binds while using your double movement. And being able to edit and use your double movement at the same time is probably one of the most important things, because a big misconception is that double movement is useful for rotations and tarping and tunneling. But the thing that it's actually the most useful for is peaks. It allows you to run way faster into a right hand peak than you would be able to with normal strafing, and basically allows you to utilize that forward momentum at a much sharper angle. And this makes your right hand peak super fast and much harder to hit. So if you wanted to practice using these double movement binds in a way that helps you in actual combat, then going into my peak map and practicing like right hand peaks and using double movement to strafe into your peaks would probably be the best way to do it, rather than just practicing using it for tunneling and tarping and things like that. So what do I think about macros for double movement? Well, the first question is, are you allowed to use macros for this purpose? And the issue is, Epic hasn't officially said whether you can or can't. So the next question is it morally correct? Is it cheating, or should you feel bad for using them? So the main issue, or the main reason that people think it's cheating, is because you can press 2 keys at the same time with 1 finger. So according to these people, you should only be able to press 5 keys at the same time on your keyboard. Now we all know people can do this with mechanical assistance by taping 2 keys together, but nobody's ever done that in a LAN tournament yet, so we don't know if you're officially allowed to do that yet. But there are ways to press more than 5 keys at the same time on your keyboard, and people have done this at LAN tournaments. For example, Clicks uses his palm to press spacebar, so technically he can press more than 5 inputs at the same time. And he's done this at LAN tournaments, he did this at World Cup, he's always played like this. So technically at LAN tournaments, you are allowed to press more than 5 inputs at once on a keyboard. So there's no issues with that. And technically you can press 2 keys at the same time very easily without any sort of taping or mechanical assistance. And all you have to do is press your finger in between the 2 keys and both of them will press down without any issues. And it's actually not really that hard to do. This clip here took me about 5 seconds to record, and I've never tried this before. It's actually really easy. So because you can do this without using any mechanical assistance, I don't see any reason why it would be wrong to use macros just to press 2 keys at the same time. Where macros cross the line and actually do become cheating is if you program them to do timed sequences for you. Because timing something takes skill and there's a lot of human error involved, and by doing this, you're pretty much removing a human skill element from the game, something that other people may have to deal with, and at that point it's an unfair advantage that other people do not have. But technically everybody can press 2 keys at the same time without using macros, so in my opinion it's not an unfair advantage because everybody can do it, and it's actually more of a choice whether someone does it or not. And it's very similar to scroll reset, where it's an extremely helpful thing that all keyboard and mouse players have access to, and it would simply be a choice whether to use it or not. And if somebody chooses not to use scroll reset, then that's their disadvantage and their choice. Now the issue is Epic still hasn't officially said whether you're allowed to use macros to do double movement or not, because technically you still can get banned, and you're basically at the mercy of whatever Epic decides to do that day when they review your report or whatever happens. But yeah, that's all for this video. Thanks guys.